The mind, a restless river, flows with countless currents, yet we often believe ourselves to be drowning in its every surge and ripple. Have you ever found yourself caught in the relentless grip of your own inner monologue, a ceaseless stream of anxieties, judgments, or self-criticisms, feeling as though these thoughts are the very essence of who you are, defining your worth and dictating your peace? Do you long for a quiet mind, a sanctuary from the internal chatter, yet find that the more you struggle against your thoughts, the more entangled you become, as if fighting shadows in a dimly lit room? There is a profound and deeply calming teaching at the heart of Buddhist wisdom, a perspective that offers not a battle plan against our thoughts, but a gentle key to unlock ourselves from their often tyrannical reign. It whispers a truth that can fundamentally alter your relationship with your own mind. This isn't about emptying the mind or achieving some impossible state of thoughtlessness. It's about discovering a space of awareness that is inherently calm, a space that is, in fact, your truest nature. Journey with me as we explore this transformative teaching. We will uncover how the simple, yet revolutionary understanding that you're not your thoughts can guide you towards a serene mental landscape you seek, allowing the mind to finally, gently settle. Imagine a young artist named Liam, whose talent was undeniable, his canvases vibrant with emotion and intricate detail. Yet beneath the surface of his creative spirit, Liam was engaged in a constant, exhausting battle with his own mind. His thoughts were like a relentless inner critic, a shadowy figure that stood perpetually beside his easel, whispering doubts and disparagements. That stroke is clumsy. This will never be good enough. You're a fraud, and soon everyone will realize it. Liam believed these thoughts implicitly. He felt they were undeniable truths, accurate reflections of his abilities and his worth. If a thought proclaimed his inadequacy, then inadequacy became his reality. His moods swung wildly, dictated by the tenor of his inner commentary. A fleeting positive thought might bring a brief respite, a momentary surge of confidence, but the critical voice was always there, waiting to reassert its dominance. His studio, a space that should have been a sanctuary of creation, often felt like a torture chamber where he was judged mercilessly by his own internal prosecutor. The suffering this caused was immense. He experienced paralyzing creative blocks, sometimes staring at a blank canvas for days, immobilized by the fear of confirming his own negative thoughts. His relationships suffered too, as he projected his inner insecurities onto others, misinterpreting their words and actions through the dark filter of his self-judgment. He longed for peace, for a quiet mind, but his efforts to achieve it only seemed to make things worse. He would try to argue with the critical thoughts, engaging in lengthy internal debates, only to find himself more deeply enmeshed in their logic. He would try to suppress them, to push them away, but they would return with even greater force, like a beach ball held underwater that eventually burst to the surface. He read books on positive thinking, repeating affirmations with forced cheerfulness, but the critical thoughts sneered at these attempts, dismissing them as foolish self-deception. He felt trapped, as if his very identity was woven from these painful, relentless mental strands. He was, in his own mind, the sum of his anxious premonitions, his harsh self-evaluations, his recurring fears. The idea that there could be a Liam separate from this inner turmoil was inconceivable to him. One afternoon, seeking escape, he wandered into an old, dusty library, a place he hadn't visited since childhood. He found himself in a quiet alcove, where an elderly librarian with eyes that seemed to hold a gentle, ancient wisdom was meticulously repairing a torn page. Liam, feeling a rare impulse to speak of his burden, hesitantly described his struggle, not as an artist, but simply as a person tormented by his own mind. The librarian listened with a quiet, unwavering attention that Liam found profoundly calming. When he had finished, she didn't offer advice or solutions. Instead, she gestured to the busy street visible through the library window, cars honking, people rushing, voices chattering. "The sounds of the city," she said softly, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "They come and go, do they not? Some are harsh, some pleasant, some neutral. You can hear them. You are aware of them. But are you the sounds? Are you the blare of the horn, or the distant siren, or the laughter of passers-by?" Liam frowned, puzzled. "No, of course not. I am here listening to them." The librarian smiled gently. "And the thoughts that arise in your mind," she continued, her gaze kind, "the whispers of doubt, the echoes of fear, the judgments and anxieties, they also come and go, do they not? Some are loud, some soft, some fleeting, some persistent. You can hear them. You are aware of them." She paused, letting her words settle. "Consider, dear boy, if you are the awareness that hears the thoughts, just as you are the awareness that hears the city sounds, rather than the thoughts themselves." Liam sat with her words, a strange new sensation stirring within him. It was as if a window had been cracked open in a stuffy, dark room. The idea was so simple, yet it struck at the very foundation of his suffering. The thoughts were still there, their familiar chorus beginning to rise. But for the first time, he perceived a tiny, almost imperceptible space between him and them. What if the voice of the inner critic wasn't his voice, but just a voice passing through? The thought was both unsettling and profoundly hopeful. He wasn't the storm. Perhaps he was the sky through which the storm passed. Liam's profound, lifelong entanglement with his thoughts, his unquestioning belief that they constituted his very identity, is a deeply human experience. Buddhist wisdom offers a compassionate and insightful exploration into why our minds so readily and tenaciously cling to this identification, often leading us into cycles of suffering or dukkha. Understanding this mechanism is the first crucial step towards unraveling it and finding a calmer mental space. One of dukkha's primary roots is the ego's relentless quest for a solid, permanent, and distinct sense of self. This I, this constructed identity, thrives on definition and continuity. Thoughts, especially those that are recurring, self-referential, and emotionally charged, "I am a failure," "I am unlovable," "I am a worrier," "I am intelligent," provide a seemingly coherent narrative for this ego self. The mind grasps onto these thoughts as evidence of its existence and nature. If I think, therefore I am, and what I think, that is who I am. This clinging to a conceptual self built from the ephemeral material of thought, is a fundamental misapprehension from the Buddhist perspective, which posits the truth of anatta, or not self, the understanding that there is no fixed, independent, unchanging soul or ego residing within us. Our thoughts are processes, not entities, and certainly not a static me. Furthermore, the sheer constancy of our thought stream contributes to this identification. From a moment we wake until we fall asleep, and sometimes even in dreams, the mind produces thoughts. This unceasing internal chatter, often termed the monkey mind for its restless and capricious nature, can create the illusion that thoughts are not just something we experience, but something we are. If thinking is always happening, it feels like an intrinsic part of our being, like breathing or having a heartbeat. We become so accustomed to the noise, so immersed in the flow, that we rarely step back to question whether this incessant mental activity is the entirety of our identity or merely one aspect of our human experience. Our conditioning from a very young age also reinforces this identification. We are praised for good thoughts, clever ideas, expressions of empathy, and sometimes admonished for bad thoughts, angry impulses, selfish desires. We learn to value our intellect, our ability to reason, plan, and analyze, all functions of thought. Society often defines success and worth based on our mental output. This external validation of our thought processes naturally leads us to equate our thoughts with our core value and identity. If our thoughts are sharp and positive, we feel good about ourselves. If they're confused or negative, we feel shame or inadequacy. Moreover, the mind often clings to thoughts because of a deep-seated fear, a fear of emptiness, of not knowing who we are if we're not our familiar narratives and beliefs. The internal dialogue, however painful, provides a sense of structure and familiarity. To let go of identifying with thoughts might feel like stepping into a void, a terrifying prospect for an ego that craves certainty and control. Even negative self-identities, I'm just an anxious person, can be strangely comforting in their predictability. The unknown space beyond these labels can seem more daunting than the known suffering within them. These thoughts that we cling to are also seen in Buddhism as sankharas, mental formations or fabrications. They are not objective truths that arise from nowhere, but conditioned phenomena shaped by our past experiences, cultural influences, ingrained biases, and emotional states. When we are unaware of this conditioned nature, we take them at face value, believing their content without question. If a thought of fear arises, we believe there's something to fear and that we are afraid. If a thought of anger arises, we become angry. We fail to see them as temporary mental events, colored by our personal history and current state. This unquestioning identification is a primary engine of suffering. When we believe our anxious thoughts, we experience anxiety. When we believe our self-critical thoughts, our self-esteem plummets. When we believe our judgmental thoughts about others, our relationships suffer. We become prisoners of our own mental commentary, tossed about by the fleeting weather patterns of the mind, mistaking the clouds for the sky itself. We react to our thoughts as if they are direct commands or absolute truths, leading to impulsive actions, emotional distress, and a pervasive lack of inner peace. The small but liberating shift in awareness that Buddhist teaching offers is the gentle suggestion that perhaps thoughts are merely events in consciousness, rather than the consciousness itself or the owner of that consciousness. Just as sounds pass through silence, thoughts can pass through awareness. The possibility begins to dawn that we can observe our thoughts without being consumed by them, without automatically endorsing their content as me or mine or truth. This initial recognition that there might be a space between the observer and the observed thought is the doorway to a calmer mind. If the root of much of our mental agitation lies in the deeply ingrained habit of identifying with our thoughts, then the Buddhist path to a calmer mind involves practices that gently cultivate a new relationship with this internal stream, a relationship of observation rather than ownership. The core of this transformative approach is not to stop thoughts, nor to forcibly change them, but to develop the capacity to witness them as they arise and pass, without getting swept away by their content or believing them to be the definitive truth of who we are. This practice, undertaken with patience and kindness, gradually creates an inner spaciousness where calm can naturally abide. One fundamental way to begin loosening the grip of identification is through the cultivation of mindfulness of thoughts. This often starts with finding a quiet space and a comfortable posture, allowing the body to settle and the breath to become a gentle anchor for attention. As you sit, you naturally become aware that thoughts are arising. Instead of your usual habit of either chasing after a thought, getting lost in its storyline, or try to push it away if it's uncomfortable, you simply acknowledge its presence. You watch it as you might watch a leaf floating down a stream. It appears, lingers for a moment, and then drifts away. There's no need to judge the thought as good or bad, useful or useless. The intention is simply to notice it, to see it clearly as a mental event distinct from the awareness that is noticing. As you continue, you might observe the sheer variety and transience of your thoughts, memories, plans, worries, fantasies, snippets of songs, random images. This direct experience of their fleeting, impersonal nature is a powerful teacher. An internal reflection might be, a thought about work has arisen, now a memory, now a feeling of restlessness. These are just passing mental events. To aid in this process of disidentification, some find it helpful to gently label their thoughts. This isn't a deep psychoanalysis, but a simple, soft mental noting. When a stream of worry begins, you might quietly note, worrying, worrying. If plans for the future dominate, planning, planning. If a judgment about yourself or someone else appears, judging, judging. This labeling acts like a gentle tap on the shoulder, reminding you that these are mental processes, patterns of thinking, rather than inherent truths or fixed aspects of your being. It helps to create a little distance, preventing you from being completely fused with the thought. The key is to do this without self-criticism. The labeling is an act of mindful recognition, not condemnation. Through this, you may begin to see how impersonal these patterns often are, how they arise due to causes and conditions, rather than being willfully authored by a solid you. Gradually, through such practices, you begin to cultivate the perspective of the observer or the witness, that aspect of your consciousness which is simply aware, stable, and unperturbed by the content of experience. This witness consciousness is not another thought, but the silent, spacious background against which all thoughts, feelings, and sensations appear and disappear. It's like realizing you are not the characters or the drama unfolding on a movie screen, but the screen itself, which remains unstained and unchanged by whatever images are projected upon it. Resting in this observer perspective, even for brief moments, can bring a profound sense of calm and freedom. You might affirm gently to yourself, I am the awareness that notices these thoughts. I am not the thoughts themselves. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached from life, but rather that you're less tossed about by the mind's internal weather, more able to engage with life from a place of centered clarity. It's crucial to approach these practices with an attitude of gentleness and non-striving. The goal isn't to achieve a perfectly blank mind or to defeat your thoughts. Such goals would only create more struggle and frustration. Instead, the intention is to cultivate awareness and acceptance. There will be times when you get completely lost in thought. That's perfectly normal. The moment you realize you've been carried away, that moment of recognition is itself a moment of mindfulness. You then gently, without scolding yourself, return your attention to the role of the observer. Each return is a quiet victory, a strengthening of this new, calmer way of being with your mind. This understanding that peace comes not from controlling thoughts, but from realizing you are the sky and not the clouds, is the heart of this calming teaching. The consistent, gentle practice of observing thoughts without identifying with them ushers in a profound and often subtle shift in our inner landscape. It's not usually a sudden, lightning bolt enlightenment, but more like the gradual clearing of a habitually overcast sky, allowing the boundless, peaceful blue that was always present to reveal itself. This transformation isn't about thoughts disappearing, but about our relationship to them changing so fundamentally that they no longer hold tyrannical sway over our peace of mind. Let's imagine Liam, our artist, sometime after he began to explore the librarian's gentle suggestion. The inner critic didn't vanish entirely. Its voice might still pipe up with familiar doubts. However, Liam's response was now different. When the thought this painting is terrible arose, instead of instantly believing it and spiraling into despair, a new awareness allowed him to recognize, there is the critic thought again. It's just a thought. He could observe it, acknowledge its familiar sting, but crucially, he no longer fused with it. He found he could continue painting, holding the thought lightly, as if it were a passing cloud, rather than an irrefutable weather forecast for his entire being. The thought still had a certain flavor, perhaps of anxiety or discouragement, but it no longer dictated his actions or his sense of self-worth with the same devastating power. This growing ability to disidentify brings a remarkable sense of inner freedom and emotional regulation. When strong emotions like anger, fear, or sadness are triggered by thoughts, the space created by the observer perspective allows us to experience these emotions without being completely consumed by them. Before, an anxious thought would immediately create a full-blown anxiety attack for Liam. Now, he might notice the anxious thought, feel the physical sensations of anxiety beginning to arise, but because he recognized the thought as just a thought. He wasn't adding a second layer of panic about the anxiety itself. He could breathe with the sensations, watch them with a degree of compassionate detachment, and often find that they would crest and subside more quickly without the fuel of identification and resistance. One of the most liberating aspects of this shift is the realization that the content of most thoughts is impersonal and often random. We begin to see how many of our thoughts are simply echoes of past conditioning, societal messages, or habitual mental loops, sankharas playing out. The self-critical thought that felt so personal, so uniquely me, is recognized as a common human pattern, perhaps learned in childhood or absorbed from a critical environment. This depersonalization strips the thought of much of its power. If it's not truly mine in some ultimate sense, if it's just a conditioned mental event, then I don't have to take it so seriously or build my identity around it. As this understanding deepens, the mental landscape begins to feel more spacious and less cluttered. The thought storm that once seemed all-encompassing gives way to an awareness of the inner sky, that vast, open, and inherently peaceful awareness that holds all thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Thoughts are seen as temporary weather patterns passing through this sky, which itself remains untouched, clear, and serene. This isn't a metaphorical idea, but an experiential reality that unfolds with practice. There's a growing sense of being grounded in this awareness, rather than being constantly tossed about by the winds of thought. Patience and persistence are vital companions on this journey. The habit of identifying with thoughts is, for most of us, decades old and deeply entrenched. There will be many moments, even after experiencing significant shifts, when we get caught again, when a particularly compelling thought hooks us and drags us back into identification and reactivity. The practice is to meet these moments not with frustration, but with the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness we are cultivating towards our thoughts. Each time we recognize we've been caught and gently disengage, we are strengthening the muscle of awareness, reinforcing the understanding that we are not our thoughts. This journey is a continuous unfolding, a deepening of wisdom and calm. The profound insight that solidifies during this shift is this: my thoughts are events in my awareness, but they are not the entirety of me. I am the spacious awareness in which these thoughts arise and pass. This isn't just an intellectual affirmation. It becomes a lived experience, bringing with it a quiet joy, a resilient peace, and a profound relief of no longer being a slave to the capricious dictates of every passing thought. The mind, once a source of torment, begins to be experienced as a wonderful tool, capable of great creativity and insight, but no longer mistaken for the master of our being. Our exploration together has traversed the often turbulent landscape of the human mind, guided by the profound Buddhist teaching that you are not your thoughts. We began by acknowledging the common struggle of being ensnared by our inner commentary, believing its pronouncements to be the very truth of our existence, as Liam the artist experienced so painfully. We then delve into why the mind clings so tenaciously to this identification and how, through gentle yet consistent practice, we can begin to cultivate the liberating perspective of the observer, creating a space between ourselves and the ceaseless flow of mental events. This journey is nothing less than a pathway to reclaiming our inherent peace. Imagine Liam in his studio now. The familiar thoughts of self-doubt or anxiety may still occasionally whisper, for the mind, by its nature, produces thoughts. But the critical difference is that these whispers no longer command his entire being. He hears them, perhaps with a gentle inner nod of recognition. Ah, that old story again. But he is no longer compelled to believe them or to let them halt his creative flow. He has discovered that he is the vast, silent canvas upon which these thoughts are momentarily painted, not the fleeting images themselves. His peace is no longer dependent on having only good thoughts or a perfectly quiet mind, but on his ability to rest in the awareness that is prior to and undisturbed by the thought stream. The librarian's simple words about the sounds of the city and the nature of awareness have blossomed into a lived understanding, transforming his inner world from a battleground into a space of potential calm. The profound teaching that you're not your thoughts is the key that unlocks the door to a quiet mind, not by silencing the thoughts, but by realizing your fundamental independence from them. When you're no longer struggling against your thoughts, resisting them, or being swept away by them, an enormous amount of mental energy is conserved. This energy, no longer consumed by inner conflict, naturally manifests as a sense of ease, clarity, and stillness. You become quiet enough internally to hear something deeper than the surface chatter of your thoughts. You begin to hear the silence of your own awareness, the inherent peace that is your birthright. This awareness is like a deep, still ocean beneath the turbulent waves on the surface. The waves, thoughts, and emotions are part of the ocean's expression, but they are not its entirety, nor do they disturb its profound depths. Let us take a moment now to connect with this quiet space that resides beyond the fluctuations of thought. Find a comfortable position, allowing your body to be at ease, yet your mind gently alert. Let your breath be natural and soft. As you breathe in, know that you are breathing in. As you breathe out, know that you are breathing out. Let the breath be an anchor in this present moment. Become aware of the sound around you, letting them come and go without judgment. Then, gently turn your attention inward, noticing any thoughts that may be arising in your mind. See if you can watch them as if they were distant clouds drifting across a vast blue sky, your awareness. There is no need to engage with them, analyze them, or push them away. Simply allow them to be, noticing their transient nature. Rest in this spacious awareness, the silent witness of your thoughts. Acknowledge this quiet knowing, this presence that is always here, even when the mind is busy. Allow this gentle intention to permeate your being. I am the peaceful awareness in which all thoughts arise and pass. My thoughts are visitors, but I am the ever-present host, the quiet sky. In this moment, I rest in the calm embrace of my own true nature beyond the chatter of the mind. This practice of disidentification is not a one-time achievement, but a lifelong unfolding, a continuous deepening of wisdom and peace. Each time you choose to observe your thoughts rather than become them, you are watering the seeds of inner freedom. The calm that results is not a fragile, forced quietness, but a resilient, spacious peace that can hold all of life's experiences with grace and wisdom. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of your mind. May this ancient Buddhist teaching serve as a gentle and powerful guide, helping you to navigate your inner world with greater calm, clarity, and compassion. If this resonates with you, please consider sharing your own experiences or insights in the comments below. Your journey can illuminate the way for others. With a sincere wish for your quiet mind and peaceful heart, farewell for now.